My name is Walt Harlan. I'm 50 years old. And the moment I'm about to tell you about took less than 4 minutes to happen, but I've thought about it almost every day since. It was a Tuesday. Hank Caldwell called me into his office at 9 in the morning. His son Reed was already in there, sitting in the chair to the right, arms crossed, like he was about to watch a game. Reed was 29. He'd been at the company 4 months. He still asked me which system handled compliance reporting. I set my folder on Hank's desk. Performance reviews going back 7 years. A breakdown of every major system I'd built. A one-page summary showing the $2.1 million in annual audit costs my risk module had saved the company. I'd spent 2 evenings putting it together. I asked for an 8% raise. That's it. Not a promotion, not a title, just 8% after 7 years with no increase, not one. Hank didn't open the folder. He looked at it, then looked at me, then leaned back in his chair and said, "Walt, guys like you are great with the nuts and bolts. But we're moving in a new direction. We need visionaries now." Then he told me my role was being absorbed into Reed's team. He said it like he was doing me a favor, like the word absorbed made it easier to swallow. Reed didn't say anything. He just nodded once, slowly, like a man agreeing to something he already knew was decided before I walked in. I looked at the folder sitting unopened on Hank's desk. 7 years of work, sitting there untouched. I said, "Understood," picked up my folder, walked back to my desk. I didn't argue, didn't raise my voice. Didn't say a single thing I'd have to explain later. I just sat down, opened my laptop, and pulled up a folder I hadn't touched in over 2 years. A folder sitting quietly behind old HR emails and archived vendor invoices. It had one document in it, System Ownership Rider, Exhibit C. I'd written it myself 4 years ago, when Caldwell was hemorrhaging clients and desperate for anything that worked. They came to me with a problem and a deadline. I built them a custom ERP integrated operations system from scratch. Freight analytics, automated risk flagging, compliance reporting that made federal audits look easy. The kind of build that normally takes a team of outside consultants a year and a half. I did it in 8 months, nights and weekends included. Before we went live, I asked their legal team to sign one document. Exhibit C stated that the architecture, logic, and automated modules I designed were licensed to Caldwell for operational use, but the intellectual property stayed mine unless renewed in writing every 18 months. Legal signed it. They probably thought it was standard boilerplate. It wasn't, and it had never been renewed. The last signature on that renewal line was 28 months old. I read through the document twice, checked the dates, checked the initials. Everything was exactly where I'd left it. I wasn't angry sitting there. That's the part people don't expect when I tell this story. I was calm. The kind of calm that comes when a situation you didn't fully understand suddenly becomes very clear. Hank hadn't just dismissed me. He'd handed me the pin and walked away from the grenade he'd built his entire operation around. I closed the folder, opened a new email, 3 sentences. I was resigning, effective end of next week, grateful for the experience, happy to assist with handover documentation. HR responded within an hour. They said Hank wanted to connect before my last day. I told them I had a lot of transition materials to prepare. They sent a calendar invite. I didn't accept it, didn't decline it, just let it sit there. That same afternoon, I made one phone call. Nate Briggs had been the CEO of Pinnacle Freight Solutions in Pittsburgh for 6 years. Caldwell had beaten Pinnacle on 4 major contracts in the last 3 years, every single time because my system made us faster, cleaner, and cheaper to audit. Nate knew it. At an industry dinner 2 years back, he'd said to no one in particular that whoever built Caldwell's ops architecture deserved better than they were probably getting. His assistant told me he was booked through the week. I asked her to pass along one message. Tell him it's Walt Harlan from Caldwell. Tell him I have a document that changes the picture on every contract they've lost to us in the last 3 years. She called back in 20 minutes. He could do Monday at 10. I drove the 2 hours to Pittsburgh that Sunday night. Checked into a hotel near their offices. Laid Exhibit C on the desk next to my coffee and read through it one more time. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't excited. I was just ready. Monday morning, I walked into Pinnacle's offices with one folder under my arm. No resume, no slide deck, no pitch prepared. Just the document and enough patience to let it speak for itself. Nate was already at his desk when his assistant walked me in. He didn't get up, just motioned to the chair across from him. "I'm listening," he said. I opened the folder, turned it to face him, and pointed to page 2. "Read that section," I said. Then we can talk. He read the whole page without saying a word. Not skimming. Reading, line by line, the way a man reads something that actually matters. When he got to the bottom, he set the folder down, leaned back, and looked at me. When does the current license expire? It expired 28 months ago, I said. It was never renewed. He was quiet for a moment. Not the kind of quiet where someone is thinking about whether to trust you. The kind where they're already doing the math and the system is still running, he said. Every day, I said. Renwick Federal's data pulls run through it every morning. Hargrove Supply uses the risk module for every outbound shipment. Delta Coast has their compliance reports automated through it. None of them know the license is dead. Nate picked up the folder again and looked at the signature page. He tapped it once with 2 fingers. How long to formalize a licensing agreement on our end? That depends on your legal team, I said. But I'm not in a hurry. He almost smiled at that. He picked up his phone, pressed one button and said, "Get legal in here." Then he set it down and looked at me again. Title and compensation. What are you thinking? I told him I wasn't thinking about that yet. I told him the first order of business was making sure the document in front of him was bulletproof, and that once that was done, everything else would take care of itself. He nodded. That was the moment I knew we were speaking the same language. His legal team had a draft licensing agreement in my hands within 48 hours. Exclusive rights. Full IP ownership retained by me. Pinnacle as sole licensed operator. Cease and desist authorization at my discretion. I read every line of it, asked for 3 changes. They made all 3 without pushback. By day 5, the agreement was signed. The cease and desist letter was printed, sealed, and sitting in an envelope on their general counsel's desk with a sticky note that said, "Hold until Walt confirms." I drove back to Columbus. I still had 4 days left at Caldwell. I spent them doing exactly what I said I would, hand over documentation, transition notes. I wrote up enough detail to look thorough and cooperative, not enough to actually keep the system functional without me. I pulled my personal API credentials from the back-end access points, deleted every local cache, removed the authentication keys tied to my personal email from the automated backup triggers. The system would keep running after I left, but it would be running blind. The risk flagging module that caught compliance problems before they became federal issues would be dark. Nobody would know until something flagged that shouldn't have, or something didn't flag that should have. On my last Thursday, Virgil Oakes stopped by my desk. Virgil was the compliance officer, the one guy in the building who actually read documents before signing them. He sat down across from me and didn't say anything for a second. "You doing okay, Walt?" "Fine," I said. "Time to move on." He looked at his hands. "If anything comes up on the documentation side, anything legal or licensing related, I hope there's a way to reach you." I gave him a business card with my personal email. He took it and looked at it longer than he needed to. "I tried to get them to run a renewal audit last year," he said quietly. Nobody wanted to spend the time on it. I didn't say anything to that. There wasn't anything useful to say. On Friday afternoon, HR brought me a card signed by the team and a coffee mug with the Caldwell logo on it. Earl from accounting gave me an awkward handshake. Someone from sales said to keep in touch. Hank's office door was closed when I walked past it on the way out. I didn't knock. The first sign that things were shifting came on a Tuesday, 8 days after I left. I was sitting on the balcony of my Pittsburgh apartment when my personal email lit up. Renwick Federal Contractors, their procurement lead, politely flagging a renewal discrepancy on their workflow licensing confirmation. Their compliance team needed documentation to close out a quarterly review. I read it twice, set my phone face down on the table, finished my coffee. By noon the same day, 2 more messages came in. Virgil, off the record, asking if I had a copy of the original license doc because legal couldn't locate a renewal on file. Earl from accounting asking if there was a payment hold on the Hargrove contract he should know about because invoices were sitting unpaid with no explanation from their end. I didn't reply to either one. The calls started the next morning. Blockage number 7:42 a.m. I let it go to voicemail. It was Hank. His voice was the kind of calm that people use when they're working very hard to sound calm. "Walt, it's Hank. Listen, we've got a documentation question, probably just a filing gap. Call me back so we can sort this out like professionals." I saved the file and went back to my morning. Voicemail 2 came at 10:08, less polished. "Walt, legal is telling me there's a clause in the original system agreement. Something about a renewal window. I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding somewhere." Let's not let this get bigger than it needs to be. By the end of the week, I had 9 voicemails saved. I hadn't listened to any of them in real time. Just saved every file as it came in. Voicemail 5 was the one where the panic broke through. Renwick is threatening to suspend the contract. Walt, that's 35% of Q4 projections. I need you to call me back. This isn't just about you and me anymore. There are people here who had nothing to do with any of this. Voicemail 8 was the one I'd been waiting for. Walt, 4% equity. You come back, help us stabilize the system. We restructure everything, new title, new terms, whatever you need, just call me, please. I forwarded all 9 files to Pinnacle's general counsel that afternoon. No message in the body, just the attachments. Subject line, voicemails. Then I sent a plain 1-page summary to 3 members of Caldwell's board of directors. No commentary, no demands. Just dates, voicemail numbers, and a note that the matter was now in legal hands. Let them sit with that over the weekend. On Monday morning, Pinnacle's legal team reached out to 2 of Caldwell's 4 major clients. No mention of me, no mention of Exhibit C. Just routine outreach, freight solutions, better rates, faster compliance turnaround, standard competitor contact. But the timing landed on top of Renwick's licensing question like a second weight on a scale that was already tipping. Hairgrove Supply's procurement lead called Caldwell, asking for written confirmation of their workflow license status. Caldwell's ops team, now being run by Reed, couldn't produce it. Reed apparently told them it was a transition administrative issue and that documentation would follow within the week. Hargrove froze 2 open invoices while they waited. The invoices didn't get paid. The documentation never came. Delta Coast sent a formal email requesting an independent compliance review of the automated reporting system they'd been using. They cited unresolved vendor documentation as the reason. Their legal team CC'd Caldwell's board on the message. That was the moment the board started paying attention. One of the board members, a guy named Whitfield who'd been on the audit committee for 6 years, apparently pulled the original implementation contract and started reading it line by line. He found Exhibit C on a Wednesday afternoon. By Thursday morning, Caldwell's head of legal had been pulled into an emergency meeting. I know this because Virgil sent me one last email. Subject line, out of options. Walt, if you're still monitoring this address, just know I tried. I flagged the renewal issue last year and got nowhere. The board is now involved. Legal is saying there's no valid license on file. If there is anything you would consider doing to slow this down, I'd encourage you to move now. This is going to get loud. I read it twice. Virgil was a straight shooter and I respected him, but there was nothing to slow down. The sequence had already started and it wasn't going to stop on its own. I archived the email and didn't reply. That same Thursday, the formal letter arrived at Caldwell's headquarters, Renwick Federal Contractors. Their lead counsel, not their procurement team, addressed directly to Hank, 1 page, no filler. Licensing validation required for all workflow systems currently in use, deadline 72 hours, failure to provide proof of active license agreement will result in immediate contract suspension pending independent audit. I got a copy forwarded to me through Pinnacle's legal team within the hour. I was eating lunch when I read it. I finished eating before I responded. The note I sent back was 3 words, send the letter. Pinnacle's general counsel pulled the cease and desist from the drawer where it had been sitting for 10 days, peeled off the sticky note, and sent it by courier that afternoon. Caldwell Freight Group had until 5 p.m. to halt all use of the Janet Flow system and its derivatives. Continued operation after that deadline would constitute willful infringement, subject to statutory damages on a per-instance basis. Hank called 6 more times that afternoon. I know because my phone logged them. I didn't pick up once. At 4:47 p.m., Reed sent me a text message. It was the first time he'd ever contacted me directly. Mr. Harlan, I know we didn't always work closely together, but I want you to know I had no idea any of this was going to happen this way. If there's any way to talk through options, I'd really appreciate it. I stared at that one for a while, not because I felt bad, because it was the first honest thing anyone at that company had said to me in weeks. Reed hadn't built anything. He hadn't taken anything from me deliberately. He'd just been handed something that was never his to begin with by a man who didn't bother to check whether he had the right to give it. I didn't reply, but I didn't forward it to legal either. Some things you just let sit. Inside Caldwell's offices, the scramble was going in every direction at once. Their IT team tried to reverse engineer the system architecture to build a lightweight replacement. It crashed in the test environment twice and flagged the CFO's name in a fraud alert on the third run. Reed assigned 2 junior analysts to document the workflow logic from scratch. They spent 3 days on it and produced a diagram that didn't match how the system actually worked, because they'd never been inside it. Hank called a Saturday morning meeting with the full leadership team. Someone posted a message in the company Slack afterward, and one of the sales team forwarded it to me without being asked. Has anyone been able to reach Walt directly? Does anyone know what he actually wants here? We need to find a way to open a channel before Monday. Nobody replied to it. Or if they did, the person who forwarded it didn't include the replies. The boardroom meeting was scheduled for the following Friday at 8 a.m. Renwick Federal's legal team had requested it after receiving no satisfactory response to their 72-hour deadline. Their lead counsel had also contacted Hargrove and Delta Coast directly, which is how Hargrove's compliance officer and a Delta Coast legal rep ended up in the same room. Nate Briggs was invited by Renwick as the incoming licensed operator of the disputed system. He brought 2 attorneys and a folder of his own. I was invited as the originating licensor of the system under review. I drove down to Columbus the night before, stayed at the same hotel I'd stayed at every year during the company's Q4 review week. Same room, practically. Old habit. In the morning, I put on a plain dark suit, skipped the tie, and drove to the office I'd worked in for 7 years. I parked in a visitor space. The lobby felt smaller than I remembered, or maybe I just filled it differently now. The receptionist looked up, started to smile the way she always had, then caught herself when she realized I wasn't badging in. I told her I was here for the Renwick meeting. She made a call, nodded, and pointed me toward the main conference room. I already knew where it was. Hank was seated at the far end of the table when I walked in. He had the look of a man who had not slept properly in 2 weeks. Collar slightly damp, tie loosened a 1/4 inch more than he would have allowed on any normal Friday. He was talking to one of his attorneys when the door opened and stopped mid-sentence when he saw me. Reed was against the wall, not at the table. Against the wall, in a chair someone had pulled from the side of the room. He had a legal pad on his knee and a pen in his hand, and he was not going to write a single thing on it. He just needed something to hold. Renwick's lead counsel was already seated. 2 compliance auditors from Hargrove flanked him. A Delta Coast legal rep sat at the corner with a laptop open, saying nothing. There was a government observer from the Federal Contractor Registry, stone-faced, hands folded. And Nate Briggs sat midway down the table with his 2 attorneys, relaxed in the way that men are relaxed when they already know how a meeting ends. I was the last one in. I walked to the open chair at the opposite end of the table from Hank and sat down. Hank looked at me the way a man looks at something he cannot quite make sense of anymore. He said, "Walt, just the name, nothing attached to it." I said, "I'm here for Renwick." I put my folder on the table and left it closed. Renwick's counsel opened the meeting. He walked through the timeline the way a good lawyer does. No drama, just dates and facts. Date of original system implementation. Date of first license renewal. Date of second renewal window, which opened and was never acted on. Continued operational use of the system for 28 months beyond license expiration. He read clause by clause from Exhibit C, including the section on willful infringement and the per instance damages structure. Hank tried twice. The first time, he said the renewal oversight was an administrative error made during a period of significant internal transition, and that the spirit of the original agreement had always been one of mutual benefit. Renwick's counsel let him finish, then asked if Caldwell could produce any written communication indicating an intent to renew during the 28-month window. Hank looked at his attorney. His attorney looked at the table. The second time, Hank said the system had been built collaboratively, that Walt had developed it as part of his role as an employee of Caldwell, and that questions of IP ownership were more nuanced than a single document might suggest. Nate's lead attorney responded to that one. He placed a second document on the table, the original employment agreement, which contained a standard IP clause limited to work produced within the scope of assigned duties. The Exhibit C system had been built outside Walt's formal job description on a separate written scope of work with separate legal sign-off. It did not fall under employee-owned IP. The clause held. Hank went quiet after that. I opened my folder, slid one page down the center of the table toward Renwick's counsel. The exclusive licensing agreement between me and Pinnacle Freight Solutions, signed, witnessed, and effective as of 10 days prior. "This is the current license status of the system," I said. "Caldwell's operational access ended at 5 p.m. last Friday." Any use after that point is covered in the cease and desist your team received. Renwick's counsel looked at it, nodded once, and closed his binder. That's sufficient. Our contract with Caldwell is suspended effective today pending transition planning. Hargrove's auditor said the same in fewer words. Delta Coast's rep typed something, closed the laptop. The room dropped in temperature without anyone touching a thermostat. Reed set his legal pad on the floor. He didn't pick it up again. Hank stared at the licensing agreement page. Then he looked up at me and said, in a voice that had most of the air taken out of it, "You could have just talked to me, Walt." I picked up my folder, stood up. "I did," I said. "The day I asked for 8%. I left without looking back at him. Walked past the race car poster in the hallway. Past the wall of retreat photos I was never in. Through the lobby where the receptionist didn't say anything this time. And out through the front doors into a cold, clear, Pittsburgh-bound morning. Nate's car was at the curb. I got in. We didn't talk much on the drive back. The radio was on low. By the time we reached Pittsburgh, Renwick had sent their formal suspension notice. Hargrove followed before noon. Delta Coast issued a statement that afternoon calling it a transition of vendor partnership, which in that industry means they were already in conversations with Pinnacle. Caldwell Freight Group, according to the financial projections Nate's team had run, had roughly 5 to 6 months before the numbers became unworkable. No major clients, no functioning compliance system, a 29-year-old ops director who had never built anything from scratch. The math wasn't complicated. Nate walked me to the 22nd floor. Corner office, 2 glass walls, a view that looked out toward Columbus on clear days. He put my badge on the desk and said, "Coffee's down the hall." I said that worked for me. He left and I stood at the window for a while. I thought about 7 years of early mornings, lunches at my desk, weekends spent debugging architecture that kept other people's bonuses intact. I thought about a folder that sat unopened on a mahogany desk while a man told me I was a pair of hands and not a mind. Then I turned away from the window and sat down. There was work to do. If you've spent years building something real while someone else took the credit, you already know what this story is actually about. It's not about getting even. It's about knowing what your work is worth and refusing to let someone else decide that for you. Most men over 50 have been in that room at least once. The meeting where everything you built gets waved off by someone who never spent a day doing it. The question isn't whether you feel it. The question is what you do next. If this one hit close, subscribe and stay around. We've got more stories like this one. And drop a comment below. I want to know if you've been there.